Given how little is known about them, Indians may be one of the most misunderstood ethnic groups in the nation. The Native American community is one of the most isolated, and the majority of people's perceptions of Indians are not founded on personal experience. Native Americans have rich and diverse cultures, languages, and practices that span the lengthy history of the Americas. Unfortunately, this group has many misconceptions and biases, reinforcing false narratives and making it difficult to understand their history and current situation. Correcting these misconceptions about Native Americans requires acknowledging the diversity within their communities and dispelling common misinterpretations. However, before fostering an accurate understanding of Native American life, it's essential to recognize and address the prevalent myths that have shaped misleading perceptions, especially in this 21st century. Stick around as we delve into some of the most prevalent misconceptions about Native Americans and unravel the truths behind these stereotypes. As you watch this video, help us hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Thanks for joining us once again. In America, Native Americans live, work, and prosper in every state. Nevertheless, due to racial narratives and prejudices, they are not seen or heard in the public conversation or mainstream media. Native Americans, the indigenous peoples of North America, have a rich cultural heritage that spans thousands of years. However, despite their deep historical roots, Native Americans continue to grapple with a multitude of myths and misconceptions that have persisted over time. These misconceptions often stem from stereotypes perpetuated by popular culture, historical inaccuracies, and a lack of comprehensive education on Native American history and culture. We will explore and correct some of the most prevalent myths surrounding Native Americans, shedding light on the realities of their diverse societies, contributions, and contemporary challenges. Let's begin with number 6. Native Americans are a monolithic group. The tendency to lump all Native American cultures together into one large monolithic entity is a common misconception. There are over 500 recognized tribes in the United States, each with its language, customs, and history. From the Navajo in the Southwest to the Inuit in the Arctic, there is a great deal of diversity among Native American tribes, and recognizing this diversity is essential to breaking down stereotypes. Some people think there was just one large Native American culture that existed on the continent before the arrival of the Europeans. This myth was initially based on the assumption that Columbus had reached India in 1492, and that all the locals there were Indians. It was easier to view the displaced people as a single homogeneous group that had to make way for the quick westward advance of European settlers, as there was little time to comprehend them. The truth is that there were countless unique tribes, each with its languages, customs, belief systems, and religions. These divisions included, among others, the Ohlone of what is now the San Francisco Bay Area, the Navajo of the Southwest, and the Iroquois of the Northwest. It is crucial to understand the unique histories, dialects, and cultural traditions that define each tribe to comprehend the variety found among Native American tribes fully. The indigenous peoples of North America, ranging from the Navajo in the Southwest to the Inuit in the Arctic, possess a diverse range of civilizations that are difficult to lump into one easy category. Attempting to categorize them under a single label obscures the depth of their cultural richness and the resilience of their distinct identities. Number 5. Native Americans are extinct or irrelevant in contemporary society. The widespread idea that Native Americans exclusively exist in historical circumstances is widely held. In contrast to popular belief, Native American communities are thriving and active and making significant contributions to contemporary civilization. a large number of people maintain their cultural heritage despite leading modern lifestyles. We maintain a false and constrained perception of Native American existence when we ignore their contemporary contributions. Also, one common misconception is that Native American traditions and communities have vanished over time, making them relics of the past. Even though Native American communities have suffered much as a result of historical injustices such as forced relocations and assimilation efforts, many have endured. They are actively working to preserve and restore their cultures. The continuing contributions of Native Americans to the cultural mosaic of the modern world must be acknowledged and respected. The idea that Native American civilizations are backward and less technologically advanced is another prevalent delusion. Before European settlers came to the Americas, indigenous peoples already had advanced societies. These societies possessed sophisticated agricultural methods, elaborate social structures, and complex religious systems. For instance, there are massive buildings, sophisticated mathematical understanding, and intricate social systems of the Mesoamerican Aztec and Maya civilizations. The pre-Columbian metropolis of Cahokia Mounds in modern-day Illinois, North America, is said to have had a population comparable to that of cities in Europe at that era. Recognizing Native American nations' variety and their considerable contributions to architecture, agriculture, and other industries is essential to debunking the backward stereotype. Number 4. Native Americans wore feathers and lived in teepees. The generalized picture of Native Americans as teepee dwellers oversimplifies the range of traditional homes that various tribes have traditionally utilized. Native American buildings range widely in style, from pueblos in the southwest to longhouses in the northeast. Every building represented the cultural and environmental circumstances of the individual tribes and had specific functions. The idea that Native Americans only live in teepees and wear feathered headdresses is a prevalent misconception that is promoted by the media and popular culture. It is essential to acknowledge the great difference in traditional attire, housing, and cultural customs across various Native American communities, even though these components are, in fact, a part of the cultural history of some tribes. For instance, because of their nomadic lifestyle, Plains Indian tribes like the Lakota and Cheyenne are frequently connected with teepees, although tribes in other areas had distinct housing types. Similarly, not all Native Americans wear feathered headdresses even if they have particular cultural and spiritual values for some tribes. More truthful and respectful depictions of Native American cultures are possible when the variety in traditional dress and dwelling is acknowledged. The idea that reserves were granted to the tribes to provide them with housing after their ancestral lands were taken away from them is utterly untrue. Most of the lands set aside in the United States under the 371 treaties ratified by the Senate and signed into law by the President were useless. After additional reductions under the 1887 Dawes Act, the reservations only comprised a few million acres. Historically, Native American nations occupied and controlled all of what is now North America. Number 3. Physical homogeneity. The idea that all Native Americans have the same physical characteristics is another mistake. In actuality, different Native American individuals and tribes have different physical traits. The oversimplified and false representation of a uniform. Native American appearance is challenged by the considerable variations in skin tones, facial features, and other characteristics throughout tribes. Using Native American mascots as a means of honoring and demonstrating respect for American Indian people was considered normal for millennia. The increasing awareness that phrases like Redskins and Braves reinforce prejudices, many of which are not only hurtful, but also might be seen as racial slurs and an appropriation of their brand, has just now come to light. In plain terms, These names and mascots consistently remind Native Americans of how others perceive them, and as a result, how they might sometimes view themselves. 2. Government benefits misconception. The myth that Native Americans get substantial government advantages is widely held, which feeds the idea that they have unfair privileges. In actuality, structural problems and economic hardships plague many Native American communities, which are frequently made worse by past injustices. Comprehending the intricate socioeconomic realities is essential to promoting empathy and demolishing false presumptions. Many individuals still believe that the government gives special advantages and treatment to Native Americans. In actuality, Native Americans pay taxes just as everyone else does, but the average amount spent nationally on non-Native Americans was just under $8,000, and just under $3,000 was spent on Native American health care per person. Misconceptions regarding federal aid programs and tribal gaming earnings have led to the widespread idea that Native Americans get considerable financial advantages from the government. Though some tribes have profited financially from gaming businesses, it's vital to remember that not all tribes play games, and the money made isn't split equally among them. The Indian Health Service and Indigenous housing initiatives are examples of federal aid programs in place to meet treaty responsibilities and remedy historical injustices. The infrastructure, healthcare, and educational levels of Native American communities differ significantly as a result of the sometimes limited resources allotted. To acknowledge the continued socio-economic struggles that many Native Americans and their tribes confront, the illusion of widespread financial affluence must be debunked. And lastly, number 1. Native Americans were passive victims of European colonization. The idea that Native Americans were helpless, victims of European colonialism, falling prey to illnesses and uprooting themselves without opposition, is another common misperception. While forced relocation and the devastation of indigenous people by European illnesses are genuine, Native Americans' resistance to colonialism was widespread and tenacious. Native Americans vigorously fought European encroachment on their territories and customs, as evidenced by several episodes of violent resistance, including the Pueblo Revolt of 1680 and Pontiac's Rebellion in the 1760s. To negotiate the complicated geopolitical environment of the day, several tribes also made diplomatic attempts and formed alliances with European powers. For a more comprehensive view of Native American history, it is essential to acknowledge the agency and resiliency of these people during the colonial era. Native American cultures flourished millennia before European contact because of their ingenuity and originality. They tamed animals, produced various plants for various uses, created cities, constructed colossal structures, developed complex religious beliefs, and formed various social and political institutions. They also participated in widespread trade. Native Americans altered their environments to suit their requirements rather than just adjusting to them. This brings us to the end of some misconceptions Native Americans face from others. However, there are still a lot of widespread misconceptions about Native American history and culture, despite increased knowledge about and interest in it. Even while the majority do not stem from racial hatred, their continued existence feeds into false beliefs that frequently show a great deal of historical and cultural distortion, or are inconsiderate to the sentiments of Native Americans. Many textbooks still portray North American Indians as nothing more than wandering tribes that survived by hunting, fishing, and gathering wild plants. Few use the phrase primitive to characterize pre-contact Native Americans. As we have shown, this is a false perception. Native American communities were, in reality, smart, varied, and wealthy. The food that Native Americans found and tamed changed the diets of Europe and Asia. Additionally, Native Americans have made several important, though sometimes overlooked, contributions to contemporary ecology, architecture, art, and medicine. The Native Americans evolved imaginative and creative societies thousands of years before European contact. They domesticated animals, created vast trade networks, built cities, created monumental architecture, developed complex religious belief systems, and created a wide range of social and political organizational structures, from kin-based bands and tribes to city-states and confederations. They also cultivated plants for food, dyes, medicines, and textiles. Native Americans altered the natural world to suit their requirements and adapted to various harsh settings. Additionally, Native Americans had difficulty preserving the core elements of their many civilizations once European settlers arrived in the New World and adjusting to drastically altered circumstances. The ancestors of Native Americans, the Paleo-Indians, crossed the Beringia land bridge that connects Asia and North America around 30,000 years ago by herding animals from Siberia into Alaska. These peoples had dispersed over North and South America by 8000 BCE. The exact number of Indians residing in the Western Hemisphere in 1492 is unknown, although it was most likely in the millions. The Americas were not, in any sense, empty regions. At least 2,000 languages were spoken in the Americas in 1492. There were obvious cultural distinctions. Some Native Americans were hunters and gatherers in small groups, while others engaged in advanced irrigated farming. Numerous areas developed sophisticated, agriculturally oriented cultures. The Mississippians and mound builders in the Ohio and Mississippi River valleys, the Incas in Peru, the Mayas and Aztecs in Mesoamerica, and others. Every Indian had a set of social classes, political systems, moral standards, and religious convictions. Everybody had adjusted to their living conditions. The concept of individual land ownership was alien. Communal property was owned and utilized by everybody. The Indians could not depend on animal byproducts like wool, leather, milk, and meat, because dogs, llamas, and alpacas were the largest domesticated animals. Even if certain tribes invented the wheel, it was only utilized as a toy. There was no culture with gunpowder, sailing ships, or mounted soldiers. No society with metal formed like cannons, swords, or tools. Severe epidemics also contributed to the conquering of Europe. The illnesses of Europe found a ready home among the Indians. Influenza, cholera, typhus, diphtheria, plague, smallpox, and measles were unknown. The measles, mumps, whooping cough, and other diseases drastically decreased the number of Indians. All these show that our perception of history is often shaped by images derived from various sources, such as movies, television, childhood stories, and folklore. These images, whether accurate or not, wield a significant influence on the way we interpret and understand the past. Nowhere is this influence more pronounced than in the history of Native Americans, where a complex set of mythic images has unconsciously woven itself into the fabric of popular belief. It is possible to distinguish between two groups of Americans regarding their understanding of Native American culture and history: those who know nothing at all and those who know even less. While it isn't quite accurate, the majority of Americans don't know anything about the Indigenous Americans. While some may contend that knowing nothing about Native Americans is completely unimportant, most people would probably concur that exposing pupils to Native viewpoints in some way is beneficial. Additionally, most Americans believe that the public school system should be in charge of supplying such exposure. Native Americans now confront a great deal of hardship. People's knowledge is constrained by the sources from which they get it. And sadly, popular culture accounts for a large portion of the information about Indians. Therefore, Patterns of struggle affect Native American communities and families differently and negatively by almost every social, cultural, economic, and physical metric. Even in places like the West, where there is a significant population of Native Americans, most people are not highly knowledgeable about the history and culture of the area's original inhabitants. Non-Indians often hold unfavorable perceptions about Native Americans, even if they are acquainted with them. Indeed, the adage, "familiarity breeds contempt," perfectly captures the tensions that exist between Native Americans and non-natives in places like Montana. Stereotyping is a terrible replacement for developing a deeper, more genuine relationship with others. White people acquire the misconception that Native Americans are drunk, get government handouts, and are affluent due to casino profits by using stereotypes to characterize them. Alternatively, people could think Indians are highly spiritual, intensely religious, and at one with the natural world. Our goal is not to debunk every stereotype or address every myth that exists about Native Americans. Instead, we hope to share our thoughts on the key factors that educators should take into account when creating lesson plans, evaluating curricula, or instructing Native children. Despite the absurdity and even silliness of many of these stories, Native people practically always come across them. Debunking myths and false beliefs about Native Americans is a crucial first step in promoting a more knowledgeable, considerate, and inclusive view of their rich cultural heritage and current circumstances. We may endeavor to create a more just and equitable future for all by supporting the continued contributions of Indigenous peoples, recognizing the diversity of Native American civilizations, and rejecting simplistic myths, destroying false beliefs, and promoting a more realistic understanding of the rich history of Native American communities requires education, candid communication, and a dedication to confronting stereotypes. To sum up, clearing up misunderstandings about Native Americans needs a dedication to understanding their many traditions, recognizing their presence in the modern day, and confronting the myths that the media perpetuates. Accepting truthful and complex viewpoints can help to make Native American communities more inclusive and respectfully portrayed, which will promote respect and understanding among people. Ultimately, dispelling myths and misunderstandings about Native Americans is an ongoing endeavor essential for a comprehensive grasp of their history. Recognizing the depth, complexity, and contributions of Native American civilizations expands our understanding of the true history of North America. By busting these myths, we can now depict the indigenous peoples who have influenced the continent for millennia in a more truthful and respectful manner. On that note, we end today's episode. Thank you for joining us once again. We hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you will be the first to see our new updates.